Okay, we are live now on Facebook.
Okay, thank you, Jalissa. Thank you for taking care of that technical difficulty. Let me say good evening to everyone and welcome to the City of Brookhaven Social Justice, Race, and Equity Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, March 18th, 2021. I am John J. Funny and I will be presiding this evening. So that we may limit the amount of interruption, I ask that you please mute your devices when you're not speaking, and please turn off or silence your cell phone devices. This Social Justice, Race, and Equity Commission public meeting has been called on matters pursuant to the Mayor and Council approved Resolution 2020-0901 to establish the Social Justice, Race, and Equity Commission, and as specified on tonight's agenda. This meeting is now called to order. As a way of, well, before I do the introduction, I would just say words cannot express the tremendous grief our nation, state, county, and city are experiencing over the tragedy that took place earlier this week. As a community, we are stunned. We mourn the loss, the tragic loss of lives and injuries, and our deepest sympathy goes out to the victims, their families, and friends within the Asian American community, our family, our sisters and brothers. Let us pause for a moment of reflection and respect for the lives lost. Thank you. As a way of introduction, I will do roll call in alphabetical order. So at this time, I would ask each commission to go ahead and take your device off of mute so that we can get through this. I call it the Miracle Mile roll call. All right, Commissioner Alexander.
Present.
Commissioner Anwar.
Present.
Commissioner Arif.
Present.
Commissioner Barrera.
Present.
Commissioner Becerra.
Present.
Commissioner Bowden.
Present.
Commissioner Burnett. Commissioner Burnett. Commissioner Kane.
Present.
Commissioner Curiello.
Present.
Commissioner Collins.
Present.
Commissioner Cortez.
Present.
Commissioner Cohn. Commissioner Cohn. Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Funny, I'm here. Commissioner Hardy.
Present.
Commissioner Hershen.
Present.
Commissioner Henson.
Present.
Commissioner Wright.
Present, or Hudson, present.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright Hudson. Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Knight. Commissioner Minor.
Present.
Commissioner Moses.
Present.
Commissioner Murthy Wall.
Present.
Commissioner Naglish.
Present.
Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Nelson, Kirk Nelson. Let the record show that Commissioner Corn has joined us. We'll remove that absent. Thank you, Commissioner Corn. Commissioner Nisi. Commissioner Nisi. That's an inside joke. Commissioner Owen.
Present.
Commissioner Patsol. Commissioner Patsol. Commissioner Palmer. Commissioner Palmer.
Palmer? That's me. I'm here.
Sorry, can you restate that?
Did he say Palmer? Like P-A-L? Yeah.
Yeah, Marco Palmer.
Yep.
Is that correct? Okay, you're here. Thank you, thank you. Commissioner Pascal.
Present.
Commissioner Russell.
Present.
Commissioner Thomas.
Present.
Commissioner Todd.
Present.
Commissioner Torres. Commissioner Torres, absent, excuse absence. Commissioner Wells.
Present.
Commissioner Wendell.
Present.
Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Commissioner Woodward.
I'm here.
Thank you all. We have a quorum and we will proceed. Let's see. I would like to recognize and welcome Dr. Kyle Williams, Commissioner Kyle Williams. He's the Dean of Students from Oglethorpe University. He replaces Renee Alvarez. As I mentioned a couple of meetings ago, Renee took a position out of state, and we have Commissioner Williams, Dr. Kyle Williams, who's the Dean of Students from Oglethorpe. He is now on the commission. So where are you, Dr. Williams? Commissioner Williams, there you are. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you all very much.
Yes.
Thank you all. It feels weird on this world because it's like, do people see me or not? But thank you all for welcoming me here. I am 1 month in and still navigating and learning Atlanta, Georgia. I joke with people that I know 2.3 areas. I just know the little bit of Brookhaven that it takes me to get things done. So thank you all for welcoming me into this space.
Sure, looking forward to working with you on this effort, and thank you for only knowing about Brookhaven. That's the only city that matters. Thank you. All right, next, commissioners, we have some business to handle. We have meeting minutes that needs to be approved. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes. One would be the regular meeting minutes, and then we have breakout session meeting minutes. And those are the meeting minutes from each of the breakouts. So each of you should have had an opportunity to have received the meeting minutes. So at this time, I will entertain 2 separate motions, and I'll take one at a time. The first motion will be approval of the February 18th, 2021 Social Justice, Race, and Equity Commission meeting minutes.
I so move. Tom Woodward for the commission meeting minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second Karen Corello.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and second that we approve the February 18th meeting minutes from our meeting. Let's see, any debate or discussion on that item? Any debate or discussion? Any debate or discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to go in reverse. All those who oppose signify by saying nay and state your name. All those who oppose signify by saying nay and state your name. Let the record show that we have no opposers. Now we will go into the affirmative. All those who approve of the meeting minutes say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Let the record show that we have a unanimous approval on the regular meeting minutes. Now I will entertain a motion for the breakout groups meeting minutes.
This is Commissioner Corn.
So moved.
Can I get a statement on the motion, please?
This is Commissioner Corn. I move that the breakout meeting minutes be approved.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Alexander.
Second, Commissioner Noglich.
We got 2 seconds. That's okay, great. All right, we have a motion and a second. Thank you all for your participation. And is there any debate or discussion? Any debate or discussion? Any debate or discussion? Hearing or seeing none, I will call for those who are in opposition of this motion by stating nay and state your name for the record. Let the record show that we received no opposition. All those who in favor state aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for your vote. Next, before you, you have received the agenda. You have agenda for tonight's meeting. I will now entertain a motion for the adoption of the agenda for our mode of operations tonight.
This is Commissioner Corello. I make a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Commissioner Bowden, I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any debate or discussion or edits on the agenda as presented? Any debate or discussion or edits on the agenda as presented? Any debate or discussion or edits? Hearing none or seeing none, I will call for all those who would oppose the adoption of the agenda, state nay and state your name for the record, please. Let the record show that we have no opposition. All those who are in favor of the agenda for tonight's meeting state aye.
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 Okay, it unanimously passes. Thank you. We have an agenda, and I'm going to move expeditiously into my next item, which is really to remind us about our charge. This commission is to really look at the vision and mission statement that currently exists within the city of Brookhaven. That's one. The next one is we will begin to look at policies and protocols around two areas within the city of Brookhaven. One, hiring and retention, and then the second, procurement and contracting. So we will be looking at those policies and protocols. We will also be looking at recommendation and best practices to guide the police department based upon their policies, actions, and accountability regarding use of force. And then further, we will come back together and we'll create proposals to ensure continued robust citizen participation related to social justice, race, and equity. It's very important that we have the involvement and input from the public. So there will be proposals that would show up those areas to make sure that we're strong in those areas. And then finally, we will review innovative policy statements across aligned and connected issues. So this is going to be our charge. This is our charge. And we have assured the mayor and council that we will handle these matters accordingly. So that's our charge. Next up on the agenda, I would like to call on Commissioner Rabbi Josh Hirschen, and he will provide our moment of inspiration. Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Fani, for inviting me to do so. Good evening, everybody, fellow commissioners. In just a week, the Jewish world will be celebrating one of the most important holidays to the Jewish faith, and that is the holiday of Passover. And during Passover, we don't eat certain things, we do eat other certain things, but the centerpiece happens on the first two nights with the Passover Seder, where we sit together at a table and we read a book called a Haggadah, and we tell the story of the Jewish people, beginning with the enslavement in Egypt and ending with freedom eventually. In the midst of that Haggadah, there's a line that goes, B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lerot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. It's a lot, it's all in Hebrew. But it means in each and every generation, every person is required to see him or herself as having themselves gone out from Egypt. It's not enough to read about it. It's not enough to think about it. It's not enough to hear about it, but only enough to see ourselves as having been part of that journey, each of ourselves. And not in this phrase, it doesn't say in each and every generation that a Jewish person must see himself as going out from Egypt. It says every person must see themselves as having gone out from Egypt in that first epic story of the freedom from slavery. And how does that happen? How do we do that? We often hear the cliches of walk a mile in another person's shoes. We often hear the idea of imagine what it feels like to be somebody else. We all really have to realize that's an impossibility. None of us can truly know what it feels like to be somebody other than ourselves. We don't know what it's like to walk in another person's shoes. We don't know what it's like to feel the skin color of another person, to feel the religion of another person, to feel the gender of another person. We don't know what it feels like to be of a different nationality. We don't know what it's like to be lumped together with a different group than the group that we're lumped together. And any attempt at doing that is hubris, completely. Instead, what we can do is practice radical empathy and empathize with other people. Realize that they carry their own story with them. Realize that they carry their own journey with them. Realize that they bring their own materials to the table from their own life. That is the only way to truly see the world of another person. You can't look through their eyes. You can't be able to put yourself in their shoes. You can only do so when you take a step back and see that they have their worldview, their world of their own that is radically different than yours and radically different from mine, but radically important just the same. Another central line of the Haggadah is we go through a litany of texts saying if God had only done this, that would have been enough. If God had only done this, that would have been enough. And we say the word dayenu, it would have been enough for us. But I think in our day and age, we've all become complacent. We've all allowed ourselves to think that we have enough of good things, that we have enough freedom, that we have enough opportunity, that we have enough of all these things. But the reality is much different. Because again, if we look outside of ourselves and look empathetically at other people, we will see that there are so many people that go without while we go with. There are so many people out there that need to be brought to the table, need to be helped, need to be heard, need to be seen, need to be loved. And so I don't think it's okay to say we have enough. I don't think we should ever be content on what we have. We should strive and yearn and desire and demand more. Many people famously, starting with Emily Lazarus and Dr. King, said words to the point of, there is no one is free until all men are free, when all people are free. We cannot say dayenu, it is enough, until all of us are free. So I want to leave with this. On Passover, we think we are talking about slavery, but we're also talking about freedom. I want everybody to close our eyes for one moment and imagine a time when you truly realize just how precious a gift freedom is because you felt it at that moment. And now it is our job to see to it that more and more of God's creations get to experience that every single day.
Thank you, Commissioner Rabbi Hirschen, for those wonderful words of inspiration. I feel so uplifted because of the words. So thank you very much. And we appreciate you serving on this commission. Next, we will move right into our agenda for this evening. I'll bring up Leslie Grady, and Leslie will take us through the next phase. Leslie.
Thank you, Chairman Funny, and good evening, everyone. It's good to see your faces again and to be present with you this evening. I'm actually going to turn the agenda over to my colleague, Mindy Cowell, who will talk to us a little bit more about what happened in the region last night. Mindy?
Thanks, Leslie. Thanks, John. So yesterday, this is what we all woke up to. John referred to this earlier in the meeting, but on Tuesday afternoon, a young white man shot and killed 8 people at 3 Asian-owned massage spas. 6 of those victims were Asian women. We've heard from at least 2 of you, and we assume that even more of you have spent time responding to and attempting to understand this awful tragedy. So we wanted to take a few minutes from tonight's agenda to really be in the moment and acknowledge the context in which we're trying to do this work. So over the past year, Asian Americans across the country have witnessed and experienced a rise in anti-Asian sentiments, aggression, and violence, which has stoked fear and anxiety within our communities. As rhetoric that has scapegoated Asians for causing the pandemic run rampant, hate crimes against Asians have spiked with 3,800 reported incidences in 2020 alone. So this is a really painful moment in time for our communities, but it's really important to remember that this is not new. Our existence and our scapegoating has played a key role in upholding the racialized caste system that we learned about last month. From the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 to the incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II, to the forced migration of refugees from US-led military conflict in Southeast Asia, to post 9/11 surveillance, specifically targeting Muslim and South Asian communities. Asian American communities have been under attack time and again by white supremacy. Anti-Asian racism has evolved throughout the centuries, but one thing remains true about each manifestation, and that is that it exists to gird white supremacy. So while this particular incident is still under investigation, and some are reticent to call this a hate crime, what we know is all too clear. The shooter targeted 3 Asian businesses, and his victims were predominantly Asian in a region that's only 6% Asian. Actions speak louder than words. Although these crimes did not occur within the city of Brookhaven, Brookhaven is not immune to anti-Asian rhetoric and aggression. 5% of Brookhaven residents, or 3,327 residents, are of Asian descent. Members of this commission are of Asian descent. And so we ask the question, how do we make sure that your recommendations reflect the reality that we see before us today? I invite you, if you have thoughts or feelings on this, to enter them into the chat. So I see that before I ask the question, one of you responded, I am part of a coalition that has put out community-focused statement and has organized a victims fund and are offering other services. So it looks like this is through Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta, which yes, they put out a very powerful statement yesterday, and they've been on the leading edge of supporting the victims and ensuring that the narrative that goes out about this is appropriate.
And Mindy, I'm thinking we can grab these links and include them in our follow-up if people, want to follow up and contribute and so forth.
So SGA, Association at Oglethorpe University, is inquiring how to assist. And I think we can definitely share information through you, Dean Williams, to be able to share information on how to assist.
And this is Commissioner RF. I was the one who posted the link to the Advancing Justice statement. I'm actually the board chair for the Asian Americans Advocacy Fund here in Atlanta. We're very much focused on everything that's going on and outreach to the families and to the businesses themselves. So Dean Williams, if you'd like to connect, happy to connect and figure out how we can kind of bring you guys into the loop and partner together on some of the initiatives we have coming up over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you very much. We are in the process. I literally just got off my SGA meeting. So we are in the process of trying to figure out, Oglethorpe did release a statement on last night. So that I'm more than happy to share if individuals want to see, but we are working with our new VP for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion as well to create and have a space for talking about these topics over the next couple of weeks.
That's great. Yeah, I can take a look at that, and I'll go ahead and connect you to the executive director of our organization, as well as Advancing Justice Atlanta, so that you can work with them directly.
Very good. This is really good information. Really good information. And I would also add, Mindy, I'm sorry to interrupt your piece here, but I'll also add that on tomorrow, President Biden, as well as Vice President Kamala Harris, will be meeting with Asian American leaders here tomorrow as they travel to this region. So this is a good sign on bringing people together to discuss these issues, to drive to some resolutions that can help on a national scale. So it's really good to have our president and vice president as leaders meet with the Asian American leaders on tomorrow.
Thank you. So I continue to, if you weren't able to think of a response to that question, I would encourage you to look at the responses and the links that your fellow commission members have posted. Several of them are statements and thought pieces that I've read and give me hope and encouragement and a little bit of direction. And so if you find that's what you need, I would certainly encourage you to look at those resources. And then lastly, I want to offer up a few more resources. So it's important to understand that to combat this particular form of racism, it's critical that we better understand it, everyone. And so to this end, we encourage you to take the time to study the Asian American experience and engage with these resources. The first one that we are encouraging you to engage is a book called Minor Feelings by Kathy Park Hong. And she paints a picture of one Asian American psyche, but it does a really great job of exposing fresh truths about racialized consciousness in America. PBS 2 years ago did a wonderful 5-episode miniseries called Asian Americans that covers the rich history of Asian American life, including our contributions and the roots of anti-Asian prejudice in America. And then lastly, one great organization, though there are many, one great organization to follow and support is Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta. Like I said, they're on the leading edge of the fight for Asian American rights and justice in the Atlanta region. And they can direct you to how to support the victims' families if that's something that you would like to do. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mindy.
Thank you, Mindy. So, John, we turn it back over to you now for the...
All right. Thank you. So what we've done since our last meeting, we've established our executive committees. The executive committee consists of the chair and the co-chairs over our subcommittee. And what you see in front of you is a listing of each subcommittee and the co-chairs and the members that will be serving on each subcommittee. So we had a great opportunity to have dialogue with the executive committee as we are looking to move into the next phase of work that's in front of us. So thank you, Leslie and her team. They help us come up with this, I call it the four-legged stool. So here's the framework, the 4 phases of what we're going to be doing. And they're such a great team and bringing pieces together for us. Phase 1, and this will be the framework for each subcommittee. We're all going to work in the same vacuum. Phase 1 is the grounding plus the data mining, finding data. That has started already. And thank you to our staff liaison. They've been really pushing data to the co-chairs, and the co-chairs have been asking for more data. So thank each of you for the work that's going on already in this phase of our framework. The second phase is the assessment. This is where we actually want to get into the subcommittee really working and assessing what data they have in front of you. So that will take place during the month of May. Phase 3, that's where we're really going to lean into the research side of what we're dealing with. And then we're going to also engage the stakeholders along the way. We want to hear from the public. So we want to make sure that we're talking to individuals in the community, different businesses or organizations. That will take place not only in phase 3, but the entire process. We never get enough of public input and the public giving us some comments on their feelings and thoughts about what we're dealing with. And then phase 4 is the development of the recommendation. So that will happen during the month of September to October. So continue to look out for this, I call it the four-legged stool, as we're working, because we're all going to be working in the same envelope in dealing with the issues of your subcommittee. Next slide. So I asked Mindy and Leslie, and they're so nice. They did what I asked them. No, but I wanted everyone to see the amount of work that's going into this. And Mindy and her team and Leslie and her team, they're really, really managing this process. We come together as a commission one night a month. But if you look at the calendar, this is a reflection of the monthly calendar that we are following. The subcommittees, they will be meeting during either the first week or the second week. We just show an arrow until the co-chairs determine which night they will be meeting. And then the commission meeting is on the third Thursday. And then a week following the commission meeting, the executive committee comes back together. That's the chair and the co-chairs with our consultants. And we sort of like do a review of what took place during the past 3 weeks. And then it gives them one full week or a part of a week to get ready for the next month. So there's a lot of work going on, and I want to thank the co-chairs and each member of each committee and the consultant team for really putting in the service that's needed to handle the tasks that we are handling. Next slide.
So now I think we are passing it to Burke. Unless there's anything else you wanted to add, John?
No, that's it. I just wanted to make sure we share that monthly calendar. It's very important, the amount of work. So yes, Burke will come up and he'll talk about the community engagement process.
Wonderful. Good evening, commissioners. I am honored to be with you this evening. I have a PowerPoint presentation. If I have the ability to share, I will do that now. Stand by. There we go. All right, y'all should be seeing this. Well, now you should be seeing the last screen. Let's try it again. That's going to be the big finale, my name. Very, very large. There we go. Excellent. Again, thank you for having me this evening. I'd like to talk a little bit about who we're targeting and then how we're doing it. So I just wanted to start first of all with just a question. We were talking about headlines, and of course there's a travesty of what has happened over the past couple of days as it pertains to the news articles that Mindy was sharing. I wrote 2 more innocuous news articles here. Well, one is Dog Bites Man, the other Man Bites Dog. I was wondering if anybody knows which one is the true headline, which would be apt to be found in a publication. Anybody want to choose between those to find out what's the news in those 2? Any takers? I'll hit it anyway if you don't. What's the headline? Headline is Man Bites Dog. Whatever is unique, whatever is a deviation from the norm, and the greater the deviation, the more newsworthy it is. To put it in the context of current events, the shooting that took place, that took place throughout the metro area, starting in North Georgia, moving to the south, where the 8 people were murdered, is a huge deviation and made great big headlines. It's all of the aspects of what news is. It's salacious, it's titillating, it's unusual. It is news. And what we're trying to do in Brookhaven, on a positive note, is we're trying to create good news, but in the good news in the context of Man Bites Dog, is why, and couch it in a perspective of why it is unique. So we are interested, and we take 2 approaches. We go with the mainstream media, and we use a more focused approach. We'll start with the mainstream media. Of course, we know the major players here. This is a sampling I did in 2014, and it's getting kind of old, but I just wanted to show you the disparity between some of the television networks. Of course, whenever we put something out, we send it all to all the TV stations, and we have one player that's head and shoulders above the rest. This just happened to be a random Tuesday in 2014. I wanted to just point out here that on this particular day, which is not a particularly unusual scenario where we have one television station which outperforms the other 3 stations combined. But anyway, whenever we send something out, we send them out to everybody. And then on the next door, we have the newspapers. And of course, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has the circulation rate, which this is when we send something out. And it's picked up. This is the amount of exposure. These are the people that this is the approximate circulation. Now, I wanted to point out that while the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has the big numbers, whoops, let me jump back here for just a second. The one that really matters and is really important to the city of Brookhaven is the Reporter newspaper. Now, we happen to have a reporter from the Reporter newspapers joining us this evening as an attendee, Sammy Purcell. Absolutely great to have her working on the Reporter newspapers, a beat reporter, so she has an opportunity to learn what it is Brookhaven is doing and actually cover us with more depth and breadth than other reporters who are doing one-offs. This number, which I had to extrapolate a little bit because the circulation numbers that I found on the website, covered several publications from Springs Publishing. It would be approximate, but the important thing about this number is it goes directly to Brookhaven homes. While all of these other ones go outside of the city limits of Brookhaven, they include Brookhaven, but they aren't necessarily limited to Brookhaven. You can bet there's about 15,000 per month that are going to the Reporter newspaper. And Sammy, if I am wrong about this, please put it in the chat and correct me, because I certainly don't want to mischaracterize anything on that. The important thing here is that when it comes to mainstream news coverage in Brookhaven, the Reporter newspaper is our bread and butter on that. So having said that, though, when there is a story that is picked up, if it's picked up by the Cox conglomerate or what used to be the Cox conglomerate, as you saw between the TV stations and or the WSB and AJC, if those two pick it up, it's going to get 500,000 exposures. If all of the news media picks it up, and that includes their website traffic, their social media, radio, email, and other engagement pieces, if there's a story that everybody's covering, the exposure is about 1 million people, and which is a lot. So we try to provide as much information as possible. We send out press releases, which is a proactive outreach tool. We aspire to highlight what is unique, what is first, what is new, what is different, in order to make it more saleable. In 2020, we did 192 different press releases. That's about 16 a month, or one every other day. We're constantly churning out information. Of course, 2020 was the year of COVID, so we didn't do quite as many as we had done in years past, but I expect that's going to pick up in 2021. We track our media exposure. Whenever Brookhaven is mentioned, even in a passing reference, we keep track of that. Some of it's all about Brookhaven, and sometimes we're just used in another story. One story that appeared today was actually a story about the city of Decatur and a drag racing enforcement ordinance that they had passed, but they noted that Brookhaven was one of the ones that had did it first, and so therefore they're covering Brookhaven ever so slightly, and therefore it's counted. 768 placements that we caught last year. That's about 2 a day. You'll notice that the difference between what we put out, which is proactive, and what we respond to, reactive, is vastly outnumbered. It's like 5 to 1. And some of it is what we put out is picked up by multiple outlets. That's why the higher number. But the other reason is that we do not control the news media. The news media has its own agenda. They are an independent force of the state. That's one of the things that makes America great. But it's also a very time-consuming process, running out inquiries on things that may or may not be what our internal focus is. So that's just a little bit of that, and just some historical data. Again, COVID impacted this. We did not get as many inquiries as we had been accustomed to in years past, but still, it's 200 some odd inquiries, and we'll see more. We'll see more of a 2019 year. in 2021, I believe. We also keep track of where it's coming from. Reporter newspapers, that blue bar on the bottom. That's where most of our coverage is, because that is our hometown newspaper and they cover us. AJC is the orange bar. We'd love to see more of that little green bar, the Atlanta Business Chronicle, because they're always talking about innovative economic development stories. You know, you can see that it from month to month, it sort of ebbs and flows. So that's more of a scattershot approach. More of a laser focus would be social media, but the same rules of engagement apply. What's unique and what is new, what is better, faster, cleaner, whatever, is what generates the engagement. And we keep track of that too. These are the users on all the different platforms, and these users, it's important to note, have chosen to receive information from the city of Brookhaven, except for Nextdoor. The way that Nextdoor counts it is just an overlapping neighborhood. There's 23,000 people in Brookhaven that use Nextdoor. Not all of them care about the city of Brookhaven. As a matter of fact, I would say a rather low percentage of that are active, engaged users. But that's where the overlay is. But the 8,671 that we had at December 31st, those Facebook users chose to follow city of Brookhaven and get the information that we're putting out. The caveat is that someone who wants to be engaged in receiving information is probably engaged in more than one channel. So if you add up all of these numbers, you're not going to have unique users. You'll have users that are actually in multiple platforms, and we recognize that. We try to grow our engagement, and we track that as well. We have goals that we set every year for reaching increased engagement. Sometimes we meet them, sometimes we don't. The important thing is that we're making progress towards engaging as many people as possible. This is just some historical numbers of how we have grown our social media. This is Twitter. Twitter is, for some reason, we're not engaging Twitter as well as we are on some of our other platforms. You see the numbers over the past 3 years. Compare that to Facebook. Facebook, Instagram are a lot better in terms of engagement. The numbers of Facebook are really, really strong. The numbers on Instagram is really new to us, and we really owe a lot of that to Jalissa. She's the one that has the Instagram following. She's the one that's grown it, and it's easier to grow the huge numbers when it's small. She's the one that started the Spanish Instagram. She's the one that started the Spanish Facebook page. We're making remarkable progress. It's not reasonable to assume we're going to do 100% every year on Instagram, but for the first couple of years, absolutely. So we have some other engagement platforms that we use that I'll point out here. Brookhaven Connect is a public works reporting app. You see a problem, you want to talk to the city about it. You don't want a whole lot of feedback. You just want to report it, get it fixed, and move on. Brookhaven Connect. We're increasing our subscribership there. Brookhaven Alert's kind of the opposite. Something bad is happening, you want to know about it, but you don't want to know about anything else. We want to know about traffic, want to know about police matters, we want to know about weather. That's what Brookhaven Alert is. If there is a notification that immediately impacts the community, it's like a reverse 911 system. And so we have subscribers to Brookhaven Alert. Brookhaven Blast, though, that's where our bread and butter is. Brookhaven Blast is our opt-in weekly email wrap-up. We have 4,000 some odd subscribers, I believe, to the Brookhaven Blast, and that gives you a weekly recap of all things that are happening in the city of Brookhaven, whether it's city generated, a city event coming up. We do nonprofits. We have some church events in there and some community gatherings and what have you. It's all covered. So in addition to that, we're also engaging. We do a monthly report on operations, which is submitted to the city manager. It's more of an internal document. We do quarterly city newsletters, which are more adept to long form think pieces about some of the nuances of city government. And these city newsletters are distributed through the reporter newspapers. So they're reaching every home, but those are happening only once a quarter. Parks activity guides telling about all the programs that we have in the parks. Those are going out 3 times a year. Depending on the subject matter, we do some targeted direct mailings. We do some door hangers from time to time. Notably, the comprehensive annual report that goes out, that goes to every resident so they can see the annual wrap up of what happened in the city of Brookhaven. So here's the process. You know, it begins with the press release. It begins with a write-up, a summary. What's going on? We try to tell that story about, you know, man bites dog, and put it in a concise form that is the basis for us moving forward with our other outreach. We post it to the website. We send it to the news media. 100%. But from that website link, what that allows us to do is get it on social media with a teaser line and a link. You don't have to read all 5 paragraphs of it if you don't want to. If the headline catches your eye, man bites dog, then you click on the link and you can consume as much content as you want. We do have some other options, of course, the quarterly newsletter, which I mentioned earlier, for a long form think piece type of situation. We occasionally do outreach through paid advertising and or paid mail outs. The only thing about that is they cost money. Actually, everything on the preceding page, all of this, all of the outreach that we do, the news media, the press releases, and the press releases, the social media, all of that's free. All of this on this page costs money. We the quarterly newsletter, paid advertising, and mailings, door hangers, and sometimes additional inserts in the Reporter newspaper. So, do we reach everybody after doing all of that? The answer is we do not. We are continually trying to improve our outreach. We're growing it, but some people do not want to be engaged, and those people are harder to reach. Our responsibility as a communications department is to make the information as widely available as possible, to get the information out in an easily consumable manner that is prone to be consumed. But once it's published, there's some responsibility on the community at large on accepting the information and digesting it. So with that said, I know I only had 5 minutes. I probably went over just a little bit. I tried to move it along, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them at this time.
Any question for Burke? Thank you, Burke, for your wonderful presentation. And you know, that really tells us how Brookhaven go about getting the word out. And then now we're going to move it down to that 500 feet above the ground level. And Valerie Lemmy, who's with the Kettering Foundation, who's a part of the great consultant team, Kettering is going to bring together a lot of research and best practices to us. So Valerie now is going to bring us down to that 500-foot level. How do we have effective communication with our citizens? So Valerie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Where are you, Valerie? There she is.
Thank you very much, Chairman Funny. I appreciate the introduction. And I am pleased to represent the Kettering Foundation, and we are located in Dayton, Ohio, and to share our research with you. And we are pleased to be a partner with the city of Brookhaven and to, again, make available to you what we know about what happens when people come together in communities to work on a shared problem. And I'd like to start by just giving you a little bit of background on what the Kettering Foundation is. First of all, we are an unusual foundation in that we are a nonprofit operating foundation as opposed to a grant-making foundation. We are rooted in the American tradition of cooperative research, and we conduct our research from the perspective of citizens. What is it that citizens can bring to the work of a community to support democracy and, quite frankly, to help fix a shared problem? So we study what people working with public institutions can do collectively to address problems affecting their lives, their communities, and their nation. And issues of race, inclusion, and equity are front and center of what most communities are talking about today, how they can achieve it and how they can sustain it. Next slide. And so what do we do? And this is one of the things that we have shared with you is a publication with the people, Introduction to an Idea, which encourages a different way of thinking about the relationship between the public, the community, and institutions of local government. So we conduct research based on what does it take to make democracy work as it should. And for that, we believe it is citizen-centered. It is the power and the responsibility and the authority that citizens bring to a problem that really makes the biggest difference. and is sustainable. And at times, you might not even fix a problem. There are some problems that aren't fixable, like poverty, but you can certainly alleviate the pressures. You can make it better for people. You can ensure that the resources are equitable and what people really need. And what better way to ensure that than to ask the people who are affected by the plans, programs, and the policies. We work with a global network of scholars and practitioners. We have a meeting next week with representatives from over 88 countries to talk about how they have responded from a community perspective, working with their respective governments to COVID-19. So this is work that we are able to share, not just from our US perspective, but from a global perspective. We also undertake the work by learning with people. I am joining your meetings to learn with you the experiences, understandings, the challenges, the barriers, the obstacles you face, and how you as a community address them. And more importantly for us is how communities learn how to create a culture of civic engagement. We usually convene in-person meetings at the foundation, and we publish what we learn from what people do. So we hope to be able to share what you learn from your journey with other communities as they move forward with theirs. Currently, the foundation is in a partnership with the International City County Management Association and the National Civic League. And we have 23 city managers who are working as you are working as a group. They are coming together as a profession to see what they might be able to do to make their communities more inclusive, foster social equity and justice. And so what we learn from your work is going to be part of what we'd like to share with them. And if life ever returns to a time when we feel more comfortable sharing, we hope that some of you will come to the foundation and share and learn and participate in what we do. We hope that you will also consider not only having us talk about your work with you, but writing about your successes. We work in partnership with the National Civic League, and what a great story to hear how people in your community have come together to take on this issue as a collective. And you're helping to sort of name what some of the challenges are, frame what some of the options are. And then I heard Commissioner Funny say, you want to make sure that you're engaging with the public, that they're part of the solutions. They're part of helping us figure out as people who live in this country and certainly in your community, how we can do better, how we can make a bigger, more profound difference. And so those are in-person learning exchanges. And we don't claim to have best practices. As a matter of fact, we think what is best is when the community makes the determination for itself what's going to work for them. So we share ideas and insights and findings that might help inform your decisions, but we don't say step 1, 2, 3, because that's not how communities work. You've got to have interaction. You've got to work through some of the tensions, and you have to own the product. And if we tell you what the answer is, you don't have much stake in what the outcome is. Next slide, please. So we really are about what is democracy. And for us, it really is the traditional sort of Greek sense of a system that was developed to counter arbitrary rule. It is a political system in which the citizens have the power to rule. And the Greek terms of demos, the citizen, and power. So we take that at our organization literally. And we were founded in 1927 by an engineer, Charles F. Kettering. And Mr. Kettering's work really came from his innovations as an engineer at the turn of the century. And you being in Georgia, you probably can appreciate a company called National Cash Register, or NCR. Well, they were founded in Dayton, Ohio, and Charles Kettering and some colleagues made an important invention that really changed the tide for that company. They electrified the cash register. And as we know, the cash register is now even in other generations, but they took what they learned and applied it to the automobile. So the patent that we most think about in Dayton when we talk about Kettering is he electrified the automobile by creating the automatic self-starter. And that changed the industry. You didn't have to go out and crank your car anymore. And he became ultimately the director of research for GM. worked with the CEO Sloan, and so you may be familiar with the term Sloan Kettering. But he was an inventor, a person who said, not only do we want to make the world a better place, we want to improve it, but we want to improve on what we improve. And that's where this notion of our being an inventive kind of place. As you work on the task force here, your commission, you will continue to talk about what are ways that we can become more fair, more just, more inclusive, take on all of the challenges that are there. And we believe work with citizens to make decisions on how to address public problems. That for us is the essence of democracy. Next slide, please. So government is not just a matter of electing governments or holding elections. It's not just procedures, but a value and a daily exercise of the equality of human beings. And so when we think about democracy, that's really how we think of it. It's the role people can play in controlling their lives and how they find the will and the way to work together in a community on shared problems. Next slide. And so our key findings and insights, and you will have a copy of this, so I'm not going to go over each one and sort of read them, but I will say that we believe that democracy can be defined through a set of practices, the way people work. And those practices include, on the second bullet point here, sort of naming and framing problems together, talking about them or deliberating what can be done, and identifying resources. And for us, it's not just, Kristen, the budget of the local government, but in fact, it's those hidden resources in communities, those assets that we often don't think about: associational life, a religious life, fraternal life. There are lots of assets and experts and people with knowledge in community that can be brought to bear on a shared problem. And we often don't think about them. They're often not included. And we encourage that to be a major focus of the resources that are available in the community to work on a problem. I'm sure you're not expecting that one place or one organization will own the results of your recommendations. That, in fact, I'm sure you see that as ownership by your entire community. So what can local officials do to help support public engagement? I think Christian, the mayor, and the council have done a terrific job by bringing you together to talk about these important and critical local and national, and I can tell you international issues. And then working together in ways that are not only democratic, where you're naming and framing problems together, but also complementary, where you see that citizens, the public, the residents, the businesses, they, in partnership with government, have a role to play. Next slide, please. And we often talk about wicked problems. I mentioned earlier that some problems don't lend themselves to quick solutions. And Chairman Funny, as a planner, I'm sure you can appreciate this sort of planning notion of what a wicked problem is. And certainly fostering racial inclusion, social equity, and justice are challenging problems for all of us to recognize. And those are the kinds of problems that lend themselves to community solutions. Next slide. And this sort of working together, an economist, Eleanor Ostrom, used the term co-production, that the public is working with public institutions on that shared problem. And so this is just a step out of what co-production, complementary acting, but working together, collaboration, co-creation are some of the terms of art that people use. But the idea that citizens have value and can make a contribution and must make a contribution if democracy is to work as it should. And so we will use terms like public good, co-creators, the products that come from the work that people produce when they do it together. And what we find, and I'm sure what all of you know, when you just think about your own experiences and your own families, is that when we come together to work on a problem, first of all, we know we're heard, we are part of the solution, and we own what happens. And if I own something, I am much more likely to follow through and to be a continued partner than if someone is dictating to me what they think I ought to do and what they think I need. I'm probably not going to pay much attention. And so that ownership, that relationship that's built, not only does it give us a product, a public good come out of it, but it also helps build trust and confidence, and we get to know one another, and we really are then more like a community. Next slide, please. So the public work is the work that citizens and institutions do together. And I've got some quotes from David Matthews, who's our president and CEO. And I mentioned Elinor Ostrom, a Nobel Prize winning economist who was recognized for the quantitative value she was able to give when citizens contribute to public work. Next slide. So how do you connect the civic vitality that I'm talking about with governance? What happens if we bring them together, and when we bring them together, what does it look like? What happens when you're able to come up with something that neither could do alone, like some solutions that help foster equity, justice, and inclusion? Next slide. So creating spaces for civic learning, and what I so like about your work as a commission is that's what you're doing. You are learning collectively as a community about the impact and the nature of some of these important issues. The conversation today about the horrendous killings in Atlanta that may have been driven by racial motivation. You know, it hurts all of our hearts. I live in Ohio, and it hurts my heart to know that that happens continually. So what can we do collectively to create the spaces that we begin to learn and understand the history and the context of others? And we certainly cannot walk in other people's shoes, but we can clearly be more empathetic and more understanding and more collective in recognizing that if we don't stand together, what the horrific outcome can be. And so recognizing the commonality we have as humans and wanting a better life for ourselves and our children, identifying community assets and resources together, and working to solve problems that will make the place we live more just, more equitable, and more inclusive. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges and the barriers that you will have to overcome. You know, we talk about the value and the importance of the public, but for way too long, they've not really been part of the work that happens in communities. Oftentimes they are feeling as though their voice isn't welcome. They may have barriers to participation. They feel the issues are too difficult, and they don't, they can't break them down in a way that they see a role for themselves to play. What can I do about this? I don't know. I'm not Elinor Ostrom. What does economics mean? But when you're able to help overcome some of those barriers, you can begin to make a difference. So I've listed again what some of those barriers might be. And if the public has a role, if they can understand that they can make a difference, that you really want to hear what they have to say, and that you really want them to work with you to solve the problem, you invite them back to the public square that they have been for so long disinvited from, because experts felt that we could do it for them. And we probably tried and then realized that there's some problems like the ones you're addressing can't be done by an institution alone. It really does require the entire community. Next slide. So creating the opportunities for the public to engage is what you're doing as a commission that is so aligned with the work that we do at the foundation. And that's the naming and the framing and the deliberating and the learning that you will do as a community. And that's what I am here to help offer any insights that I can, to offer any information and other resources that I can, and people in our network that you might be interested in hearing from as you broach some of these particular topics, particularly as you move to develop a process for engaging more people in the community in this work. Next slide. So I would say that the biggest opportunity that I see for you is to lead courageously in changing times, help create a culture of learning and innovation, and encourage inquiry, exploration, and experimentation to try different approaches and ways that you can make your community, again, more just, more equitable, and more inclusive. Next slide. There's some resources that are listed here. Again, you will have a hard copy. Feel free to reach out to me. I will certainly loop everybody on the staff and the consultant team back in, but we'd love to do what we can. We'd love to share our knowledge and our information. And more importantly, we're just really appreciative of being part of the journey with you. And we'd like to learn from you so that we can share with others. And with that, I say thank you very much. And Commissioner, let me know if there are questions that people may have.
Would anyone have any question of Valerie? Thank you, Valerie. That was very well put. And I like your new definition of public work. When we think of public works, we think about infrastructure, but bringing the citizen and the institution together to create that public work. I like that. Thank you, Valerie, for your information. Next, we have video. There we go. There we go.
The parable of the blobs and squares. Governments like to do stuff. They think they can help and make people better. They're also answerable to the people, and they don't want to be seen to waste their money. And they take this responsibility very seriously. So seriously, in fact, that they count stuff and measure stuff and arrange stuff so they can tell people where their money has been spent. It's really not that easy. And so they have to order the stuff in certain ways. But some things can't be counted, measured, and arranged. Let's call these things the problems. Sometimes the problems don't look like squares. Sometimes the problems involve people. And when problems and people come together, they aren't squarish. They are, well, blobbish. Blobs change and don't like being stacked and arranged and organized. Why, government wondered, did every time they try to solve a problem, did the problem get worse? Why don't these problems know what's good for them and stay put so that we can fix them? The government said, this isn't working. We don't seem to be able to get to the bottom of this. Who can we get to help us understand the problems better? But because the government is so responsible for how they spend people's money, they needed to find people they were sure they could trust to spend it wisely. They asked some people like them, who look like them and talk like them. And they gave the money to them because they trusted them to manage it, account for it, and spend it in a sensible way. And of course, they looked, well, a bit squarish. This is a big job, said the little squares. We must do our best to succeed. And so they set about developing the tools to do the job, the equipment, the institutional capacity, professional expertise. And they set about understanding the blobs better, because how could they help if they didn't understand the problem? They invested in the process for solving problems, and they invested in the infrastructure for solving problems. But no matter how much the squares tried to reach out into the community and understand the root causes of the problems, they never managed it. They really weren't able to get to where the problems were. They were, well, just too squarish. Oh dear, the government squares said to the little squares, this isn't working. And it wasn't. A gulf still separated the squares from the blobs. It wasn't working because however well they understood the problems simply weren't theirs. And no matter how hard they tried, the problems just wouldn't stand still. We've invested all this money, said the government, created all this expertise, built all this resource, but it still hasn't worked. And so they tried to bridge the gulf by asking the little squares to find blobs they could partner with. And so the little squares invited the blobs that seemed like they had the energy, vitality, and the drive to make a difference to work with them and sit on their boards as representatives. This time, they didn't just experiment on the blobs, they asked the blobs what they wanted and what they thought and how life should be. But this approach made the blob unhappy because it seemed to reinforce the difference even more. Oh dear, the squares said, this still isn't working. So they tried giving some of the money directly to grassroots organizations that were very blobby. They must be able to solve the problem, they thought, because you can't get closer to the problem than that. But to be trusted with the money, the blobs had to produce reports. attend training sessions, and write risk assessments. And by the time the blobs had done all this, something strange happened. They had ceased to be blobs and had become little squares. And by the blobs becoming squarish, they lost everything that made them blobs. Their energy, grassroots connections, vitality. And something more important happened. They became neither blobs nor squares. They lost their sense of what made them who they are. And they lost their sense that they could do something to help, that they could solve problems, and that they had an idea of how to make the world a better place. We think there is a different way. We think the squares are really good at some things, and we think the blobs are really good at others. We think co-production is a different way for squares and blobs to work together. While the squares may well be the experts in the process, the blobs have something equally important and something the solution needs: the context. Co-production is a partnership where the process and context have equal value, where squares and blobs need and value each other for who they are and what they can give. One is not more important or valuable than the other. It isn't about imposing a solution on the problem. Instead, it is about understanding that the solution can only lie in the problem. It is only through a process where the assets of both the squares and blobs are valued equally that great things can happen. Each one of us has a strength. As a professional is more than their job title, a person is more than their problem. Co-production matters! To find out more about co-production and a new way to do business, go to www.
And Commissioner Funny, I will add that video was based on research that was done at the Kettering Foundation. Actually used our research as the basis for the work. So those are the kinds of relationships that we like to help foster. We don't do your work for you, but we love to help publicize it and support it.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you. And with the blobs and the square, everybody can be co-production in this process. I love it. Everybody have their place. So thank you for that. That's a real good illustration video. And I love hearing the little blobs talk. All right, we're gonna move right along our agenda. Thank you all, Valerie. Thank you for your presentation and your video. I'm gonna bring up Leslie and Kim, and they're gonna take us through an open discussion. You know, this commission, I've spoken to many of you and you love to talk. So this is your time to really engage with us this evening. Leslie and Kim.
Thank you, John. I think Kim must be on the screen, but we really wanted to open up. We've been talking to you a lot this evening and wanted to hear from you. So a couple of things I would just say to frame our conversation. One is, if you had the chance to look at the Eric Liu video in advance that you got for homework, he talks all about power, right? And wielding power and owning power and understanding power and how it moves and shakes and influences and changes cities and governments. And so thinking about what that means. The other reading was all about authenticity, right? When you're connecting, when blogs and squares are coming together and you're making that connection, authenticity that makes it long term. We also spoke this evening early in about being present in the moment and in the context of what is happening in our community and where we are. So we have this commission that, you know, is maybe akin to, right, that little yellow blog who got invited to be able to say, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna do that? And having to go through the process. We have a lot of process with it. But I encourage you now, how can we break out of that process, do good work and partner, but also be creative in what we do and how we reach out and who we reach out to, so that we can make this experience for you as commissioners and co-producers, as well as for the larger community, a really a special one and a unique one that moves us forward on this journey of social justice and equity for the city of Brookhaven. So I open up the floor for chats. Of course, they're always welcome, but also take your mic off and let's hear from you. What's coming up for you right now from all of these different discussions and presentations that you've had?
Okay, so they're going to be bashful. So I'm just going to start it off, Leslie, just to get them warmed up. I feel diverse citizen engagement is important because as we, and I'm going to use the analogy of a Kool-Aid, as we make the flavor of this Kool-Aid, I want my white associates to be a part of it. I want my Black family to be a part of it. I want Asian, I want Indian. I want everybody who's in the community. I want every gender, because I need to hear from their angle, their perspective on how we create the solution. That's why I think diverse citizen engagement is important. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet because I know they're stumping at the bit to move into discussion.
Good evening, commissioners. This is Tiffany. I've been struck with the concept of radical empathy that Rabbi said to us earlier today and shared with I had not heard that before. And I'm still pondering it because I think that is the answer. Too often, when I'm engaging in D&I conversations, particularly with folks who are not Black, there is this feeling that because they're not of my background, excuse me, that they cannot relate and therefore remove themselves from being, effective diversity respondents. And if we really think about radical empathy, it's actually saying you don't actually have to be able to look through my eyes because you're not going to be able to, but what you can do is be reflective, to be able to look at yourself, to be able to look at how you've been impacted by the world. And oftentimes we don't take enough time to sit with ourselves and to ask ourselves questions around how we have been socialized and impacted. And so I think that concept of radical empathy is something that I will carry into my daily life and work because it is a perfect response to those who'll say, well, I'll never be able to understand what it's like to be fill in the blank, and therefore use that as an opportunity to divorce oneself from problem solving. And so the work that we are charged to do as a full commission is to internalize this radical empathy so that we can work together as a team. And then as we're engaging our community members, to encourage them to understand, because I've actually seen some research that empathy is not increasing. It's actually decreasing because people are finding it difficult to empathize with people who are different. And so the science is there too, as well as the spirituality. So I find that to be just incredibly impactful and a wonderful way to ground our work. So I thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
You have a hand raised, Ms. Leslie.
Okay, I think it was it John?
Tom Woodard.
Yes, I wanted to kind of build on what Tiffany said. I think it ties directly to that. Diverse citizen engagement is important because individually we each have our blind spots that we're really not aware of. And as a group, we can certainly eliminate the blind spots and be more effective as a commission if we do hear voices and opinions from different points of view to broaden our perspective. None of us can see everything, but everybody can see a lot more.
Commissioner Pascal.
Yes, hi, good evening. Building along on these 2 points, I wanted to say that as we are reaching out to these citizens, we need to be very aware of what are potential barriers to participation from the citizens. So being aware of, obstacles that are there that we may not, when you think about it, first, it might not seem like a barrier. Like if we say, let's do a survey, by phone or on Facebook, well, we need to realize that many people may not, have access to a phone or may not have access to, a Facebook account. So I think that we need to be really open-minded in terms of how are we gonna eliminate these barriers to citizen participation, everywhere, because things that we may not think prima facie as barriers can be barriers to participation. So we need to be mindful that we need to meet people where they are and go where they are and meet them to make sure that we have this true participation from everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner Pascal. Anyone else? And I'm just going to make one response to that. And then Leslie, I think we should talk about this as we're moving into the development of the engagement. Something we do in the planning community, and I like that, Commissioner Pascal, meet the people where they are. We sometimes set up tables at the Walmarts or at the grocery store where we know people are going, so that we can interface with them while they're in their space and do a survey or whatever we may decide to do. So let's think about that. How do we integrate that with the process?
And I see a couple more participants.
Yes. Commissioner Kim.
Hi, this is Commissioner Kim. I just wanted to dovetail on what the last commissioner was saying in terms of recognizing the barriers that might be in place for some of our constituents in terms of being involved. And one thing that I think we should also take into account as well is the level of trauma that BIPOC communities have experienced, particularly in the last year, and which I think is resonant of many years of trauma way before 2020. And so not only, physical or financial barriers, but considering the whole person and maybe offering different opportunities and ways to speak up, because people who are used to a culture of not being safe enough to speak up aren't just going to come out of the bushes all of a sudden and start preaching about all the wrongs that they've experienced. I would go so far as to say that many in the community who have experienced this kind of trauma are still kind of having a reckoning and still processing all the different layers to it. So just kind of taking that into account as we reach out and work with the larger community. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Let's see.
Dean Williams.
Dean Williams.
Yeah. Commissioner Williams, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. And I want to honor the space that Commissioner Kim talked about in regards to the trauma that exists for BIPOC communities. I also want to think about what it means to have and or expect that members of those communities, if you're not familiar with what BIPOC means, it's Black, Indigenous, and people of color. But within those communities, I think the other important aspect is sometimes the trauma also comes up because we are often asked to explain what is occurring within that community when something occurs. And so something that I've been very cognizant of is even with what is occurring within my Asian American family members, because that's what I believe, we're all one big family, that it is not my job to ask someone who's identifying or identifies in that identity to then explain what all the systems and oppressive nature that they have experienced. I think we are in a space where we have to think about how traumatic that is for someone to also have those conversations. I also just want to also point out access. So I think the ways in which we are having these conversations, I know that right now we are live recording on Facebook, and I know that we have opportunities for people to submit things, but also I would encourage us to think about those who are not, who don't have the accessibility to even be in this space, or as we are having conversations, particularly we think about diversity. I think we also, yes, the racial and social, racial and social economics are very important, but even thinking about how are we captioning these meetings so that people are able to read, so those who are hearing impaired can participate. And then what about those who do not have accessibility to even get or have access to the internet kind of media? So how are we also engaging them and asking them to participate in things that might be important to them, but we don't know because we may not have looked at ways in which we can access them to look at how we can provide access for them to be able to have their voice heard.
Thank you. Great points. Thank you. Any others?
I have a comment. This is Commissioner Wells. And I'm just picking up on the last comments that Commissioner Pasquale and also Dr. Williams just mentioned. One of the things that I see when you look at this commission alone, when you look at it, you look at the education and technology capital of this commission is it's kind of far reach that all of us will be able to, well, I'll speak for myself. It's kind of far reach for me to be able to say that I know people who don't have access to any of the things that we have as a group. And we have to, when we talk about empathy, we need to talk about our commission. All of us are basically, we have more than a high school education, majority of us do. So when we talk about reaching the community, we need to look at all demographics of socialization, because in America, we are socialized in a certain way. We are sort of like prejudice as a result of ignorance. When I think about our Asian brothers and sisters, like Dr. Williams said, I am concerned with the fact that my neighbors on both sides are Asians. We have conversations all the time, but most of the time, the majority of people don't have that luxury. So we have to get together as a community of diversity. Well, we get to know each other more. When we see what happened with the guy doing the other night with the Asian Americans, we had heard about it in the media, but when it comes home, it becomes an even greater problem. We start looking at our own front door and start sleeping. But I think that we need to be more reactive rather than proactive.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Wells. And next we have, I think I seen the chat, Commissioner Hirschen, is he?
And the rabbi, yes, there it is.
Commissioner Hirschen? Okay.
A couple of thoughts come to mind. First thing is that, remember a couple of years ago after the Pittsburgh shooting, in shuls and synagogues, we kept on talking about anti-Semitism, and finally I just got up and I said one Saturday morning, I said, I'm really sick and tired of talking about this. The reality is there's nothing nuanced about Jews talking about anti-Semitism, because the solution to anti-Semitism doesn't lie with Jews, it lies with non-Jews. The solution to racism doesn't lie with Black people, it lies with non-Black people. The solution to xenophobia doesn't lie with immigrants, it lies with people who don't see themselves as immigrants, right? It requires that those who are on the outside of those groups have the ability to look in. And so this commission being made up of so many diverse faces really speaks to that. What's missing from this commission is the child in the room. And what really strikes me as odd, the other night when we heard, when the news broke about the massacre, it was a 21-year-old. That's somebody without a frontal lobe fully formed that did that, right? That's a 21-year-old. When I was 21, I was trying to figure out what party I wanted to go to and what classes I had to take. I remember where I was when I turned 20. Like, I remember all of that, right? This is a murderer at the age of 21, right? This is a child. And it's another proof that we are failing our children on a daily basis and raising them in a world that is a puzzle of pieces made together to make a map. We have to do better with our children. And so I know Commissioner Funny, when you and I spoke on the phone, we spoke a little bit about, the need to go to some of the schools and everything. I would like to see us more involved with the children and with the schools, because our generations have already failed. Like, we're already done. Like, our only hope is the next one doing better than we did. And so the best we can do is give them the tools and the ability to carry forth what we're trying to do, because we're not going to do it ourselves. It's for them that we're doing this, and they need to be a part of this conversation.
That's true. And we, as you mentioned, we will be having a series of discussions with youth within the schools, because you're right. That's the next generation that we can make a major impact upon. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Herschen. Next will be Commissioner Hardy.
Thank you, Commissioner Funny. And so, yeah, when someone said meet people where they are, that really resonated with me, and not just from a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint, because, you know, these issues that we're talking about aren't just one-dimensional, they're three-dimensional. You know, and a lot of the issues that are in the minority community stem from, you know, trust. You know, there's no trust in government. You know, people don't feel comfortable speaking out or speaking to people about their problems and what's going on with their lives. So I think it's important for us maybe to reach out to those leaders within those communities, you know, like pastors, churches, obviously like the Hispanic community, African-American community, church, family are very important. And they trust those individuals, those leaders in those churches. So I think if we could somehow reach out to them and use them sort of as a conduit to reach the people, so we could maybe gain their trust and learn more on what we need to do to help these individuals and what's affecting them on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hardy. Building that trust and connecting with people where they are. I understand that's a great point. Mentally, where are they mentally, and how do we connect with them with a high level of trust so that they would feel comfortable communicating with us? Thank you for that. All right, so at this time, I want to thank each of you for giving us your discussion. Those were really good points. And know that the minutes will capture all of this great information, and we will sort it out to see how this applies to our plan that we will be developing. So next up, we have Patty Hansen. Patty is with the City of Brookhaven, and Patty is responsible for securing and in a lot of cases, managing grants that we may receive from the federal government and our organizations. So Patty is going to come forward with a community block grant presentation. And I want to welcome Patty to share this presentation with the commission. And the purpose of this is so that we will be informed of the equity component of what's necessary for the city to participate with this federal grant application. And I'll turn it over to Patty at this time.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm almost going to throw out all my notes. First, I'll thank you, Chair Funny, who got an email from us about a month and a half ago and quickly came up to speed on what this program is and allowed us to borrow a little bit of your time this evening. There's almost nothing that could have led better into the discussion we're about to have. The Community Development Block Grant Program is a federal program that comes through the Office of Housing and Urban Development. It is a small program in Brookhaven. We are just starting it up. There is not anywhere near enough money to address all the issues that we have identified, but there is no program without a successful process rooted in community engagement, understanding and meeting people where they are. And that is what we have spent the last few months doing. Community Development Block Grant funding comes only to communities that have been identified and met the standard of an entitlement community. Brookhaven is, a population standpoint, qualifies to apply as a community, as an entitlement community. We're working towards gaining that status. And in order to not take up too much of your time, I'm going to back off and answer questions afterwards, but I would like to introduce you to Aaron Sorrell with Community Planning Insights. one thing I learned as an administrator for 6 years of a startup program in another municipality is the best thing you can do is what you all are doing is you bring in experts who have an idea of how best things are done around the country, and then focus in on what your needs are. So I'm going to ask Aaron to start sharing his screen. Knowing that you have limited time, it's a little bit of a dense presentation, but I want to just let you all know that tomorrow the actual plan will be posted for the 30-day comment period. Aaron and I and Patrice Ruffin are all available to answer any questions if you'd like to review it, or if you'd like to take a look at it and say, nope, don't want to review it. I just want to call you and have some questions. That's fine. But we're going to go through, as Chair Funny said, sort of just what it is, but also what we found in our outreach, a little bit of that, and what our recommendations are when you see that through the plan. So without further ado, this is Erin Sorrell with Community Planning Insights, and I will step back. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Oh.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right, great. So again, as Patty mentioned, my name is Erin Sorrell with Community Planning Insights. So I'm just going to go through a quick slide deck to give a little bit of background on the CDBG program for individuals who aren't familiar with it. It is a broad program to address a whole host of community needs. There's really only a few caveats. That the first being that the activity must meet one of 3 national objectives, either that it benefits low and moderate income persons, prevents the elimination of slum and blight, or addresses an urgent need. Most, I would say 80 to 90% of the activities will fall under the first national objective, those that are benefiting low and moderate income persons. We estimate the annual awards for Brookhaven over the next 5 years will be about $360,000 per year. This first award will come in at $361,000. That may change every year depending on the appropriation from Congress, and then also if there are additional entitlement communities that come online, that could lower that slice of the pie. The broad activity categories are listed here, but include infrastructure, economic development, parks and recreation, housing rehabilitation. One of the odd rules about CDBG is that with rare exception, it can't be used for new construction, but it can be used for housing rehabilitation, including emergency repairs. And then public service programs like counseling, job training, things of that nature. So the consolidated plan is a 5-year plan that's required to access HUD entitlement program funds. Right now, Brookhaven is only eligible for the CDBG program. So it is essentially a comprehensive plan that fits a HUD template. So it looks at housing, economic, and community development needs, and then the priorities as the community has determined them. It has an outline of a strategic plan and goal, and then the individual activities are developed each year to address those identified needs and priorities. And over that 5-year period, we estimate that there'll be about $1.8 million in CDBG funds that flow into Brookhaven. So it's not inconsequential. So far on our community outreach, we've touched about 500 individuals. We did an online bilingual survey that went live on January 18th. In addition, which isn't on the slide, we sent direct mailing postcards to the neighborhoods around Buford Highway. So we sent about 5,700 postcards letting people know about the project and the survey, because in all likelihood, that is where most of the funds will be spent in that area. And then we have been doing agency focus group interviews. The agencies are listed here. So far, we've touched about 21 representatives across those agencies. When you read through the plan, there's really 5 main sources of data if you have any questions. One is the most recent ACS, or the American Community Survey. The second is what's called a comprehensive housing affordability strategy, or the CHAZ data. It's a special tabulation that the Census Department does for HUD. It lags in time, so the most recent data is 2013 to 2017. And then the 2018 longitudinal employer household dynamics. It links where people live and versus where they work. So you can get a lot of interesting information about workers and residents. And then a bunch of various HUD databases that are sprinkled throughout. I'm just going to go through a few of the items that struck me that, that are outlined in the plan. It is a long plan, so if you have time to read it, please do, but I'm going to hit a few of the highlights. On the housing side, housing problems are most acute among renter households. This is a snapshot of the housing problems by household. So substandard housing is basically incomplete plumbing, overcrowded or severely overcrowded. Overcrowded is more than 1.5 persons, or is more than 1.5 persons living per room, or excuse me, overcrowded is more than 1 person living in per room, and severely overcrowded is more than 1.5 people. Cost burden, HUD has a threshold of the idea where you should not be spending more than 30% of your household income on housing expenses, which includes rent or mortgage, taxes, utilities. You're considered cost burdened if you're spending more than 30% of that income, and severely cost burdened if you're spending more than half of your income on housing. So nearly 25% of all renters in Brookhaven are considered cost burdened. And when we look at housing problems by race or ethnicity, Hispanic households have a disproportionate need across all income cohorts. One thing I should mention, so most of the data is broken out by income cohorts, less than 30% area median income. That's what AMI stands for, 30 to 50, et cetera. Just for your frame of reference, median income in Brookhaven is about $82,000. A single person household for the range of 0 to 30% AMI is up to $17,400. Just so you get some frame of reference there. As you can see from this table, there are significantly more households with issues on the renter side than on the owner. Although there are, nearly 1,000 owner-occupied or homeowners who are cost burdened. Some of those could be retirees. Some of them could be, cost burdened by choice because they want to move into Brookhaven. Oops, sorry. So the housing costs are high, and your housing costs are significantly outpacing natural wage growth, which is largely driven by migration. Over the last 5 years, median home values have gone up by 31%, and median contract rent has gone up by 33%. The chart on the bottom is a tabulation of rental housing needs. So it looks at the gaps in housing units. So on the right-hand side, under rental unit affordability, what that is saying is those are units that are affordable to people who, or households who earn less than 30% AMI, 30 to 50, or 50 to 80, et cetera. So on the far right-hand side of the chart, these are the total units that correspond to each of these income cohorts. So there are 589 units in Brookhaven that HUD feels, or the data shows, that is affordable to people who earn less than 30% AMI. However, when you look at the columns, those are the number of households who are in each income cohort. So there are 1,600, just over 1,600 households that earn less than 30% AMI, yet there are only 589 units that are affordable for those individuals. And so you can see, just when you look at the chart, you can see how many households are within that income bracket and where they are living. So there's just over or almost an 1,100 unit gap for extremely low income renter households, and an 881 unit gap for very low income renter households, those who are in the 30 to 50% AMI. So there is significant need for affordable rental housing. When we look at the non-housing needs, most of these needs were determined by surveys and interviews, and then just on the ground expertise. By far, on the non-housing needs, affordable childcare was the most identified need, and it was really across all ethnicities. But one of the reasons, or that that this is the most identified need, is it's the largest hurdle for households, especially single parent households, to enter the workforce. And so it's, if you have kids, childcare is expensive, and there's not a lot of subsidies out there for it. So that was by far the #1 non-housing need. Secondly, workforce development or job access for low and moderate income residents, and then infrastructure and transportation improvements. The transportation system is expensive. Well, the public transportation system is expensive and doesn't always connect low income areas with job centers. So that's not a need, or that's not an issue that Brookhaven can solve alone by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a need that was raised by residents. So challenges that we see laid out in the plan for Brookhaven is that this is a high growth area with accelerating cost appreciation. There are racial and ethnic housing disparities. This is a map of the concentration of households with severe housing problems. You can see that it's largely concentrated along the Beaufort Highway corridor. And there's been very little previous HUD investment in the low and moderate income areas. In fact, there's actually just overall very few HUD resources available in Brookhaven, from the utilization of the Housing Choice Voucher Program to the number of income subsidized housing units. There just aren't that many. There's opportunities here. One, the opportunity to target CDBG funds and resources to those areas and those groups in need. You have the flip side of the strong housing market is that it is an opportunity. You have developers who are interested in the area. We need to solve that affordability gap, especially when it comes to high land costs or high acquisition costs versus the debt service that a development can carry and still charge affordable rents. And then you have a strong, engaged community and a high capacity nonprofit and agency environment, which is unique in many cases. I don't see some of the communities I work with who have the bench, so to speak, of agencies and nonprofits. So there's a lot to work with here.
Hey, Aaron?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. How many more slides do you have?
Just 2.
Okay, good. 2 minutes. Yep. All right, good. Thank you.
So these are the plan priorities as they are drafted. I won't read them all, but you can see them here. I've talked mostly about all of these, but feel free to read the plan, or if you just want to skip to the good parts, the strategic plan part of the consolidated plan really hits the highlights. These are both Patty and my contact information. If you have further questions, when you get into the plan, if you've got questions about the data, where it came from, the analysis, feel free to reach out to me, and I can run through the calculations or answer questions about how we got to our recommendations.
Chair Funny?
Yes, ma'am.
It's Patty. I just want to jump in. Again, thank you for this time. And thank you, Aaron, who I'm sure many of you appreciate, combed through thousands of pages of data and documents and has done a great job of really focusing in on the community. Julissa just put up the link to the site where the plan is. I will warn you, it's 134 pages of data, because that's what you got to do when you're, to qualify for this program. But again, we are available to discuss any and all of these questions for you. The 2021 action plan begins on page 134.
Yeah,
it's right there in the
about
index.
mid-130s.
Might be where you want to focus, because that is the decision about where to focus money for, where to focus funding for the next year. Wonderful. I'd love to save you those first 100 or few pages.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you and your team for going after these grants. These grants are very important to the City of Brookhaven, especially when it's for targeted areas. So thank you, Aaron, for your presentation. I have 2 points that I'd like to note before we move into public comment, and you don't have to answer, Patty. We can just talk offline. I think he mentioned that you had 486 touches. I think that's low. For the City of Brookhaven, we have 58,000 citizens. So I need to hear more about how do you try to reach out. And then the second was, he mentioned the designated area that is a prime focus, Buford Highway, but I didn't see the Latin American Association listed as one of the entity, unless I missed it. I may have missed it, but I don't think I saw it. So those are just, as we think about inclusive and bringing people together, I think this plan is really good, but we can follow up on those 2 points.
Just one thing, we did interview and have lengthy discussions with LAA. I missed them on the slide, so thank you for.
I think they had their own focus group. That was our typo, and thank you very much for pointing that out.
Good.
And you're absolutely right. We can always do better. We had a lot of challenges this year, particularly because it's meeting people where they're at. And Commissioner Pasquale and I have had a lot of great conversations about that. And to save you time, we'll talk offline, but we hear what you're saying and we appreciate it.
Okay, great work. Thank you all for doing this. We appreciate you coming on tonight to present to the commissioners. Moving right along the agenda, I'm going to open the public comments portion of the meeting. And if you wish to make a comment during the public comment portion of the meeting, you may do so by one of 4 methods. You may email sjrec@brookhaven.gov, or you can visit the city's Social Justice, Race, and Equity Commission website and submit a comment. You can also write your comment in the Zoom chat section here, or you can raise your hand and be recognized on Zoom during this meeting. So you have 4 ways of participating. Please be respectful and courteous as you're addressing this body. Any unruly, rude, or profanity-laced comments will be muted or removed from the Zoom meeting. Please govern yourself accordingly. At this time, I'll open up public comments. Jalissa, do we have anybody?
No, we don't.
We don't.
Not through email or Facebook. If anybody, we have 3 attendees on Zoom. So if they would like to ask something, this is their moment.
Nobody hands raised. Going once, going twice. Nobody hand is raised. So thank you all for attending. Oh, we have a hand. All right, so Jalissa, you want to bring that person over to be recognized, please?
Nelson Jones, I'll allow you to talk on Zoom. Just unmute yourself and you'll be heard.
And give your name and your address, please, when you introduce yourself. Mr. Jones. You're muted if you're talking. We can't hear you.
I think you put a comment in the chat.
Yeah, I just want to put a comment in the chat.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you for attending also. We appreciate your input.
Yeah, excellent information.
Thank you. Any others? Thank you for your public comment. All right. Hearing none, I will now close the public comment portion of our meeting and I'll turn it over to our consultants, led by Leslie Grady. Dr. Grady?
Thank you, Chairman Funny. So we had another little video for you, but it's very late and I'm just appreciating all of this information and conversation. So I will just quickly make a few announcements. And the first is, this is last call for the book club. We will, after this, when we send out the follow-up tomorrow, we'll have a link and you'll have another opportunity to sign up for the book club. Our first book, which all commission members will receive thanks to the city of Brookhaven, is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So everyone will get that book, and we're looking at having the first meeting tentatively the 4th week of April. And then the cadence will be somewhere around 5 to 6 weeks after that. So we'll have a nice little time, and we promise we won't give you huge books. There'll be reasonable books that we believe you'll be able to read in 5 to 6 weeks. So please sign up. We expect to have a really good set of dialogues with that. Secondly, we just want to acknowledge that we recognize that your time is precious and that these meetings are starting to take more and more toll on you, particularly as you go into your subcommittees. And so know that moving forward, these large commission meetings and times will be more condensed. And what we'll do is begin to shape and move them into a space for creativity and to spark thinking and to have conversation with others, because the work will be happening through the subcommittees. That will be with the pouring through data, the development of stakeholder and community outreach plans, the making of the sausage, so to speak. And so we recognize that. We want to thank you for this time tonight, but know that we hope to provide some relief to a whole lot of long meetings in the evening. And also it could be potentially be a time for troubleshooting for anything that we want to bring to the attention of the whole commission. So we encourage you to let us know what you'd like to discuss in these large settings and what you'd like to learn, and we will bring that to these settings in addition to continuing to support the subcommittees. And so that's it, Chairman Funny, for our update.
Thank you, Leslie. And I'm going to do a couple of communication updates here before I adjourn the meeting, and I'll ask if there's any last wording from any of the commission. We are bringing on a storyteller, and this person is going to be working with us to write our story. So we'll be able to tell our story, what's happening as we lead into meeting, and possibly some follow-up on the output from our meetings. So we will be bringing someone on to help us write and tell our story. Next, thank you, Jalissa. Jalissa is going to be working and producing our quarterly newsletter. So this is going to be exciting. This newsletter will be sent to every household in the city of Brookhaven. So Jalissa has a draft that's pending, and she's probably waiting on people to get back with her on comments. So thank you, Jalissa, for pulling that quarterly newsletter together. And then finally, we will be bringing on an intern from the university that's here in the city of Brookhaven, Oglethorpe. And this intern is going to help us capture feedback. They're going to help us on some video productions, and they're going to be working under Jalissa help. And Jalissa is going to be managing this person to assist us with, again, telling the full story of the good things that each of you are doing and will be doing within your subcommittees, as well as the commission as a whole. So those are some of the communication updates to make sure that we get the story out, because you know what they say, if you don't tell the story, someone will create a story for you. So we want to make sure we get the story out to everyone. Any closing comments or questions before I call for a motion to adjourn? All right, hearing none, I want to thank each of you for joining the meeting tonight. Thank you, co-chairs, and thank you to our staff liaisons. Also, thank you to each commission members for your service and your leadership as we all work together as the squares and the blobs. We're all going to work together to come up with the best solution as we get into our subcommittee work. So at this time, I'll call for a motion for the adjournment, unless y'all want to stay here all night.
I'm moved.
Oh, he didn't wait on that one. All right, we got a motion. We don't need a second. Thank you all. Have a good night. I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Night.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Great meeting.